Hello and welcome to the Flicks Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode we have Netflix 152nd film. It's the 2019 rom-com The Last Summer, directed by William Bindley. It stars KJ Apa, Maia Mitchell, Jacob Latimore, Halston Stage, and Tyler Posey. I am Jesse and I am here with MJ. How are you today?
I'm very, very well. How are you, mate?
Good. I mean, I think we've mentioned this many times before. We're still in lockdown in our part of Australia. So still doing these podcasts remotely, but it's nice to see a familiar face because we can see each other, which is nice.
It's very true, because lockdown consists of not being able to basically see anybody. The only way you can possibly see someone is if you exercise with someone outside or you bump into them at the supermarket. That's literally the only way we can see people. So, it's pretty grim, and I don't think we're coming out of it anytime soon, Jesse.
No, I went to the bottle shop during a lunch break the other day, and I happened to come across a colleague, and I was like, "Oh, fancy seeing you!" These are our nightly supplements to keep us going. So, that's the only way that you can really see anyone is, like you mentioned, bump or do some exercise. So, let's get into this podcast though, because we're talking about The Last Summer. We start our show off with our fast flicks, our quick summary of what it's all about. So, what is The Last Summer about?
I don't know how else to do a fast flick for this movie without basically just saying a group of teenagers who have just finished high school navigate their way through the final summer before starting college. I don't know. I tried to think of a way to say it differently, but it just picks it up perfectly.
I've got pretty much exactly the same. It's a bunch of kids that want to live it up before they turn into adults and go to college.
That's it.
We'll probably put a spoiler alert out now to say that we're probably going to ruin this film. So if you want to check The Last Summer out, if you haven't seen it and you wouldn't mind watching it before listening to us, do so now. Give us a pause and come back, because we're going to get into the nitty gritty where we talk about how this film was or got to Netflix. And I'm sure MJ's got some really good information on this.
Yeah, well, this is probably not really spoiler filled, this part of it, because I couldn't find too much. But I will spoil it later on. Look, I mean, from what I can gather, the script was in the works for a while with the Bindley brothers, William and Scott. But all I can really find is, and when I say a while, I mean a few years. January 2018 is when it was sort of announced that this film was getting made, directed by William Bindley, screenplay from his brother Scott. It was announced at that point that KJ Apa would star in the film, who I've since realised is in the TV show Riverdale, which is quite big, which I've never seen. So at the time, they were planning on having principal production underway at the end of April that same year. As it turned out, principal production commenced in May, so they were pretty much bang on there. The movie was filmed in Cleveland, Ohio, which disappointed I didn't know that going into it, because I visited Cleveland a year and a half ago. And yeah, I would have liked to have watched it a little bit and tried to see if there were some locations that I actually recognized. But mind you, it was cold as ass when I was there. It was like snowing, and I was just trying to stay inside.
From what I could see, I think it was only like the skate park scenes.
True, but there were scenes on like the water, because there's obviously that big lake in Cleveland, which is really nice. So there was obviously a few things there, but you're right, a lot of it was interior scenes in this film.
Wasn't that Chicago, the lake?
Oh yeah, because it was.
Yeah, it's in Chicago. I'm pretty sure that was all in and around Chicago.
Did they actually do it in Chicago? Because IMDb said that it was filmed in Cleveland.
Yeah,
I didn't say Chicago at all.
I think that bike ride, from what I could see or what I read, was in and around Chicago. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we've seen different things.
It would make sense, because obviously the Cubs, and they were at. Yeah, that was I'm assuming their ground. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh well.
Yep. Yeah. It's tricky though, because I think that there were probably some other scenes that were in Cleveland as well, but I think they did try to give off a very Chicago vibe throughout the film.
Yeah. Well, I also didn't visit any skate parks in Cleveland, so I wouldn't have bothered me if I didn't see. But yeah, basically in June, so obviously once they just commenced principal photography in June, it was announced that Netflix had acquired the worldwide rights to the film, and then it was released basically a year later, May the 3rd, 2019. So not a very exciting story. Obviously, they got people together to make a film. They started making the film. Netflix said, yep, we'll have it. And then they released it. Done.
Yep. I think that you've covered that very nicely. the tagline for this one was "Your real life is about to begin," and I thought that was one of the most cringeworthy taglines I've seen on a film in a while. But I guess if you're in that age bracket, then it might resonate a little bit. The title for this one, I could only find a couple of weird ones around the world. I thought that Japan's one was a bit of a highlight, where it's called Last Summer Before This Summer. So I thought that was a very interesting one. And then Poland, this one was a little bit deceiving because it's called Last Holiday. And I'm not sure, I know that, summer break sometimes is called holidays, but it sort of deceives a little bit that...
school holidays?
Yeah, and these guys didn't go on a holiday. So anyway, that's where we're
They might have gone to Cleveland to do some skating, though.
True. This one's actually, we do our shows based on, there's a big list online of these Netflix original films, and this one's actually been taken off that list. So I was getting stressed out a couple of weeks before we did this episode, and I was thinking, okay, do we need to take it off? Do we need to take it off? But there is no documentation anywhere that this is accessible anywhere other than Netflix, everywhere in the world. So I'm not sure why someone's decided to take it. It's on Wikipedia, this list, so anyone can go in and play around with it. But I think that this is a very, very Netflix film, 100%. But yeah, I don't think there's any arguments there. The only other thing was there's a bit of fanfare afterwards where a lot of people started posting stuff online saying, there's a sequel for this that's being filmed in secret. And it sort of came to fruition that this is just a bunch of fan kids posting stories, making up absolute rubbish. There's no sequel in the works at all at the moment.
How does this movie have a group of fans who are already petitioning for a sequel?
There were multiple entertainment websites that had posted articles saying, this is being filmed. So that was
journalism these days. They don't need much to go.
Bit of a letdown for some of the fans of this one. The other thing for this one, I guess, is it was nominated for 3 awards at the Teen Choice Awards in 2019. So it was nominated for the Choice Summer Movie Award, the Choice Summer Actor Award for KJ Apa, who plays Griffin. He's a Kiwi. And then for the Choice Summer Movie Actress for Maia Mitchell, who's played Phoebe, who's an Aussie. So we've got an Aussie and a Kiwi who are both nominated. And the interesting thing, and I looked a little bit further, all 3 of these awards were lost to Spider-Man Far From Home. So lost the film to Spider-Man Far From Home, lost the actor to Tom Holland, and lost the actress to Zendaya. So
I think they were never really in the hunt.
Probably not.
You said Maia Mitchell's Australian. Have you ever heard of her? I hadn't heard of her.
She was in Teen Beach. Is it Teen Beach movie? She was in one of the Disney Channel movies that I used to, after High School Musical, I used to try and check out all the Disney Channel original films, and I'm pretty sure it was Teen Beach movie she was in.
Good on her. So she hasn't done much in Australia that we would know of.
No, and she does a lot of voiceover for animation too. So she's the voice of one of the cubs in the Lion Guard, which is like a spin-off of The Lion King.
Right.
Yeah, so little bits and pieces there, but has done a fair bit of work for Disney.
All right. Well, we love Aussies doing well.
We do. I had a percentage match for this one. It's been a while.
I have not. I just thought they just stopped doing them. I haven't had one for ages.
I got 75%, which for a rom-com for me, I thought was pretty high. And I'm not sure how they came up with that, but I was very interested, very, very interested.
I think that this podcast has made me realize that you may be impartial to the odd rom-com.
If they're done well, then yeah, I think you might be right.
If the movie's good, I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Just if it's rubbish, I'm going to think it's rubbish. Let's have a talk about the consensus for this one. What have you got from online, from critics and people abroad?
Well, I'll start with IMDb, the rating on IMDb, because it's probably the one that Netflix and the Bindley brothers will be happy with. 5.6 out of 10. Not great, but not bad. 5.6 out of 10, 12,000 ratings. Yep, we'll take it. Serviceable. It gets a bit downhill from there. So the Letterboxd community did not like it. It's a 2 out of 5 there. So that extrapolates to a 4 out of 10, as you can see how far off IMDb it is. And that's, again, around 12,000 ratings. So not a bad amount of people have rated it. So there's numbers there. There's eyeballs there. People have watched it. But the Letterboxd crew didn't like it. And I think that might be reflected elsewhere.
Yeah, I think you're bang on there with Rotten Tomatoes. It sits at a pretty rotten 29%. Now, that's only on 7 critic reviews, though. But the audience sort of agreed there with the critics and had it at 28% on over 50 reviews. So much more on that lower end than what IMDb is giving us, I guess. I thought that the ratings on IMDb and Letterboxd bang on pretty much exactly the same amount of people, which doesn't happen very often. It's usually some sort of right. Disparity, but yeah, very, very close. So that can lead us into our early thoughts. What are your thoughts on this film?
Before I do, can I request that every episode that you give us the tagline of the movie? I enjoyed that.
Okay, sure.
I'm actually generally quite a fan of taglines. I think they're kind of fun, and I think I think it'll be a nice thing to bring to it. Obviously, every time you hear a tagline, of course that's a tagline. But still, I think we should do that. Bring it to the podcast.
I've just recently been going through Binge, which is an online streaming service we've got in Australia, and with their films, they actually put the IMDb rating on the film as well as a tagline. And some of the taglines on Binge are hilarious. If there's any Australian listeners that want to look at the taglines that they put with the film, very funny. Sorry.
Is it not the film's tagline, or are they making their own?
They make their own ones up. Some very funny one-liners there. Anyway, hit us up with your early thoughts.
Yes, sorry, back to the last summer. So I like the premise of this. I think it's a really interesting journey into teenagers who are going through a real transition phase of their lives. Some things feel really important, but they actually aren't, and some things feel really important, but they are. And the decisions that they make can alter the trajectory of their journey, or they can have no impact at all. But during this time, everything feels real and everything feels adult, and it's also this time that's full of possibilities. And I don't know how well this notion actually translated into a feature-length film. I think some bits worked. I think ultimately I felt as if we never really ended anyone's story, and that's okay, but the journey itself wasn't overly inspiring for anyone. And I liked the characters enough, and I liked the charm of the film, but it definitely left me feeling pretty stranded by the end of it.
Yeah, I think they're good points that you make. And that probably leads to my thoughts as well, where the start of this really grinded my gears. I'm doing a little bit of a Peter Griffin segue here because there were way too many characters. And you couldn't work, like, to start off with, I don't want to have to concentrate so hard on a film to work out who comes into where or who's who and how they all fit in. And I think that to start a film off like that, and I know if you've got that many characters, you want to try and introduce them all really quickly, but it sort of sets up that idea too, that you do have too many loose ends to try and tie up at the end, and too many little minor parts that probably, if we focus more on a couple of the major characters, it probably could have been done a bit better. But towards the back end, I sort of dug it, and one of the better teen films that we've probably done on Netflix, and maybe that's the performances, but yeah, I didn't actually hate it.
You're 100% right. And again, the idea of introducing all of these characters is because you want to introduce diversity to what people are actually interested in doing with their summer and what is important to them. And I think that's great. But by the end of it, you almost have to pick and choose as an audience whether you actually invested in this story or not, for particular different stories. And even just looking at, if you look at Wikipedia, it's got the plot, and it's actually broken down the plot as these characters' story, these characters' story, and it's like three scrolls down the screen to read the whole plot of the story, because there's just so much happening. So you are 100% right, and actually that's probably going to lead us into characters. And
yeah, I was going to say exact same thing, because you almost need to bunch the characters together when you talk about them a little bit at times.
Yeah, and some of them you just can't really comment on that much because we just don't know them there. Anyway, let's go into, and we'll talk about obviously the Griffin and Phoebe story first, because that's the story that gets probably the most airtime, and that's the story personally that I probably connect with the most. And I reckon I felt like I really connected with Griffin specifically. He was a bit wienerish, despite the fact that he looked like an out-and-out jock, which didn't really work for me there. But he was very in touch with his emotions. He generally had this great moral compass, and I think I just agreed on his perceptions of right and wrong. And he also backed himself in without being too egocentric about it. He was just a really good dude, and I just really liked him.
Yeah, I think you've just said that really well, because to me this should have been his film. Like you start off with a voiceover from him, and you get that idea of his aspirations to work in the music industry, and I liked that back and forward between his dad, and that was that main crux of his things that he needed to contemplate throughout this film, where these complications with him working out that his dad's not being faithful, and that awkward situation that it puts him in. And I did like that follow through where he's trying to step away from these expectations of his dad because he doesn't want to be seen as being like him. So I think, like you said, I think I probably connected with him the most as well.
Yeah, good call. And look, similar with Phoebe, I liked her too, probably in a similar vein to Griffin, but less. She's obviously less confident and more driven, and probably a little bit more complicated. And as I said, this couple or this relationship was probably the element of the film that I connected with the most. And it's probably the most typical and cliche romance movie style relationship in the whole film, where it's like the girl, I've got other things to focus on. I can't fall in love with someone, fall in love anyway, find out that there's a problem. They have a big issue and they come together in the end. It's as stereotypical as it comes, but both characters and I guess their morals and their perceptions were really nice and really relatable and worked really well.
Yep, I agree. I think that sort of like we mentioned too, and she makes it's pretty explicit that she's got this idea that she sees herself as an observer and has been let down by a lot of men in her life. So to see Griffin break through and the consistency and I mean, he wasn't too annoying about it, but it was nice to see him, be able to break that down a little bit and sort of support her and give her that confidence in her lifestyle choice, where she wants to be a filmmaker. And I enjoyed the supporting moments of him, pumping her tires up a little bit and giving her that confidence that, you sort of see that she was lacking from at the start.
God, he was great for her, wasn't he?
He was very good. All right, who you got next?
Well, this is where it gets murky, because I've got Alec next, played by Jacob Latimore, and he arguably is probably gets the next most screen time, or his story is probably the next most focused on. And I don't think we even really get close to a 360 view of this character, because he's kind of there to tell that story about the difficulties of dating and the decisions that you make as a teenager and how they're going to impact everything else. But here's this guy who runs his own business right out of high school, doing driveways. And to me, that's the story that I want to hear about. Like, how's this guy doing this? What an absolute champion, earning a big crust of money over summer with a skill that you'd have to learn. I know there's a lot of manual labor to it, but good on him. But all we hear about is I get the story side of it, because it's, what do we do? Should we do the right thing and not string this out? Or, if we care for each other, what do we do? And I like that tough decision that he has to make. And I guess he finds out the hard way that, he probably made the wrong decision and how it turns out in the end. But I don't know. I just don't know enough about him.
Yeah, I this is where I did my first lumping, where I just lumped him and Erin together, and I just literally broke them down as that stereotypical couple that break up, both end up with different people, and realize, oh well, maybe we should give it another shot together. And then in those breakups, you see her go off with a jock, and you see him go off with a bimbo almost. So you sort of see that. And I think they make mention at the end that, they need a little bit of a connection on that, the mental side as well. So, there wasn't really a lot there that you could, they're just these side characters. That's all they really were.
But with all that said, like, I actually found the whole Erin, I didn't like her breaking up with Ricky, the rookie baseball player, because he was awesome. He was charming. He was romantic. He had his head screwed on. Like, he was there to, obviously baseball was a real career for him, and he was working hard at it, and he wasn't, the typical jock baseball player. But I was actually watching thinking, how are they gonna end this? Because I think any sort of one who's just mindlessly watching this film is connecting with Ricky and thinking he's a good dude. And I know that she's going to have to end up with Alec in some way or another, because that's what this story is telling me. How are you going to end this? And I didn't like the way that they ended that. And I think maybe if they had more time to do it, they could have done it differently. But yeah, it just felt like tacked on.
Yeah, super quick rushed breakup that, oh, you're seeing your ex, so I'm done with you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's all it was.
That wasn't him. That wasn't the Ricky we knew.
It wasn't, was it? I put Audrey. I needed to talk about Audrey now because apart from Griffin and Phoebe, her standalone story I really enjoyed, and through this kid Lila that she was babysitting, I thought that it was a really good way of showing her understanding the clarity that she needed to move forward in her life, and realizing, and the kid said it multiple times, but realizing you shouldn't just settle. You shouldn't just settle for what you're expected to do. Do what you want to do. And she was this, again, we're looking at these stereotypes, but she was different to the others in that, we have these scenes with her mother, passed out on the couch and not having the money and the finances that a lot of them have. But I liked her understanding towards the end that, she's going to be fine to make her own choices. And yeah, I think that was a good character, not necessarily the relationships or the connections with the other characters. They could have done this in a better way, I think, and I'll probably mention that later. But I did enjoy her character.
I agree. Hers was a really nice story, and again, it fits in perfectly with the idea of telling different stories. And I like that they go down this angle. Here's a girl who needs money. That's why she wants to work. College may not be the route for her, and she's going through this discovery phase of finding out what's going to satisfy her muse. And I think that's a really important story to tell. If you're aiming this movie at teenagers, they need to understand that that's a real option for them, and that's a real thing that they might be going through in their summer. So I think that worked pretty well too. She kind of was really prominent in the start of the film, and I kind of was toying whether she was like the main character apart from other than the Griffin story, and then she just disappeared throughout the middle of the film, and then came back hard at the end. But it was an important story.
Good. Who else do you want to talk about?
I just want to circle back to Foster, who was Alex's mate, and this could be a controversial perspective, but I felt bad for him almost the entire film. Like he made this list that was more of a fairy tale than anything else. Like he had a list of girls he wanted to sleep with that included like married celebrities on it. And the fact that he got outed for people discovering this list just felt bizarre to me. Like his ego was this purely on the surface, and whilst he had this confidence to him, he had this sensitive side, and he knew what he wanted, and he was a really good mate. And I just think like this story never really did enough to make it work, because they obviously wanted this side, like my summer, I want to get laid. That's what I want to do this summer. Fine, have that story in it. But I think they just completely got confused with how they wanted this character to be, because they wanted him to be a decent guy, despite the fact that he had these desires to sleep with all the girls. And then they kind of humanized him too much to make the whole, like, let's make him feel bad for doing this. And I'm like, what did he actually do? Like, I don't know. It's just, I liked the guy, and it just kind of felt weird what they were trying to do with this character.
I've got a real easy solution. Take that character out of the film. Like, maybe it just wasn't needed. Like, yeah, I get that you want to have that stereotype of the one that wants to, pop the cherry over summer, but you can get rid of him. And it doesn't take away from the film. And then Chad and Reese. I kept referring to them as the losers throughout my notes. I was just like, the losers. There wasn't too much difference between the two, to be honest. I mean, I think Chad probably got a little bit more screen time to sort of highlight the same thing was happening with Reese anyway, so you didn't need to hear it from both of them. But again, these are two characters that did we really need their story? Like young guys banging older women. That's it.
I mean, like their story was fine to show a different side of how people might want to use their summer and what's important to them. But apart from some comic relief from time to time, I didn't ever really buy into it enough to care. Like when they came on screen, I was like, cool, I can just sort of switch off a little bit with these guys and I might have a laugh here or there. But what they wanted, they found out that they could drink beers without getting ID'd. Great. That was what they wanted to do in the summer. Cool. And in a story where there's enough going on anyway. I mean, you talk about leaving things out. This definitely could have been cut out because they didn't even interact with the other characters. Like it was.
I guess it's a positive that they're getting out of the basement from playing video games and getting outside. So that's the positive we'll take from any other that Mason guy. Just another character that's just a waste of space.
seems incredibly successul.
Yeah.
He also doesn't seem like the kind of guy Griffin would hang out with. But anyway,
Yeah, good. I think that's it for characters.
oh mate, yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
the director William Bindley, couple of TV movies, couple of TV episodes in the 90s. Did a film called Madison in 2001, which starred Jake Lloyd from the Star
really?
Wars prequels,
Star Wars.
and also a bit of producing work. So I did that Mother's Day film that had all the different stories, like the New Year's Eve one or New Year's Day, and what was the other one? Valentine's Day. Yeah. And the Nut Job, an animation film as well. So
yeah,
mixed bag of work.
Hadn't directed a movie in 18 years, but obviously, as you said, was busy with producing duties. An executive producer for Mother's Day. That's probably his biggest feather in the cap for his career so far.
All right, well, let's talk about some scenes. What are some ones that you didn't mind in this one?
There was a line, and I'm just trying to remember. I'm pretty sure. So it was when Griffin and Phoebe are at might be 4th of July. They sort of leave the 4th of July shindig and go sit on the lake by themselves. And I think Griffin says I love you. I think it's him who says it first. Yeah, it is. Of course it is. Yeah. And this movie had the best response to I love you for the first time, where the other person didn't want to say I love you. Like, it's always a really awkward thing. And people could say I love you and not expect to hear it back, and that's fine. And her response was, I'm here, I'm right here. And I was thinking, like, that's a really nice way to respond to someone saying I love you when you're not ready to say it yourself, because you're not saying like thank you or like, oh, I'm not quite there yet, but you're saying like, hey, I'm on this journey, I'm here. And I think that should have been called out. So I've called it out. So well done.
Yeah, good point.
Good piece of dialogue. I really liked the way that Griffin told off his dad when he was down the curb about obviously cheating on his mum, but he didn't overdo it, and he kept it really matter of fact, just to basically let him know, really be the bigger man and take the moral high ground. It would have been out of character for him to flip his lid a little bit, and I think it probably had a lot more strength to it by doing it the way he did it. I thought it was really well handled. He didn't blackmail his dad or anything like that, but he just took complete control of the situation, and really shut his dad down. And I like that, because his dad didn't really get a chance to say anything, because Griffin wasn't going off at him. He basically just said, this is ridiculous what you've done.
Good point.
Sort yourself out. I really like that. Good. And finally, I got like the corny romantic inside me enjoyed the final skating scene with Phoebe wearing the beret. Predictable and lame, but it fed my soul. And I really liked these two characters. So I knew they were going to end up together, but seeing them together like that, that's just what I needed before I flicked it off.
Oh, nice little nice little romantic moment. So good choice.
Yeah.
I got a few. I'll try and race through them as quickly as possible. I love a sports scene. So the MLB game between the Reds, the Cubs, I thought that was really cool. Guy flying over the fence, chatting a girl up. I just thought that was a cool little moment.
The crowd in that scene that were like sitting around those girls were awful. Those extras were absolutely terrible. They were so aware that they were in a scene in the movie. It just drew me away. I just have to say that.
Yeah, that's fair. I thought that I mentioned this Foster guy that, probably wasn't needed, but one of the dates that he went on, that super religious family, when he's sitting next to the younger brother and the brother's like, you've got no shot, give up. She doesn't even kiss. I just had a laugh. I thought that was funny. It's a good little advice from a younger sibling. I liked, there's a scene with Griffin and Phoebe where they leave the movies and they start talking about the Coen brothers. And just for us, I just thought that the mention of IMDb was cool, where she's like, I think she said, you're so full of it right now. Your IMDb app is literally exploding. And he's like, sorry, IMDb? What's this you speak of? I thought for us, that was cool.
I had this in my questions for you, Jesse, as to whether you enjoyed that.
Yeah, I did. That was cool. I liked the Ferris Bueller sort of homage that they sort of showed throughout Chicago. That bike ride scene, just it was trying to vibe off that so much, and I enjoyed that. I thought that was cool. The dinner at the baseball stadium behind the scoreboard, I was like, what a view, beautiful view, but also how the hell did he get all that food and all that stuff up there? Like, just a logical thing that blew my mind. Very, very impressive guy, that guy.
He's great.
No, just a one-liner from Alec when he's talking about Paige and how he's not feeling it, and I think he said she has the IQ of a toaster.
I did like that.
I thought that was very funny. And then finally, this is probably the only sort of scene that sort of got me feeling a little bit, where the reveal of the loser guys, Chad and Reese, and how the girls already knew that they were younger than they thought. And I just thought there was a sweet line along the lines of, whoever said you're not cool, they don't know you, sort of thing. And I just liked that. I thought that was a nice little line from the older lady. Yeah,
good call.
All right, what's some stuff you didn't like in this one?
I didn't like initially when Alec and Foster are chatting and he reveals that he's never slept with anyone. How does his best mate not know that? that didn't work for me. It felt weird. So, and the other thing I've got is, as I said before, when Foster got called out for his list, when she was just like, and look at this list, it's gone viral, everyone's looked at it. I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is just a stupid list. Why is he such a joke for it? So, yeah, I guess some of the Foster stuff, I think I said it when I talked about the character, it was just all over the place.
Yep.
So, yeah, that were the two things I didn't like.
Good. Like I mentioned at the start, anything with Mason in it, hated it because he's not needed. I think that it really sort of it was a bit cringy where Griffin and Phoebe, and they do it at the beginning and at the end, where they start reeling off all the alumni from the colleges or the schools that they're going to. I was like,
didn't like it?
Didn't like it. Thought it was rubbish.
Okay.
No one really cares. Like, just keep talking to each other. And this is one of my pet hates. Griffin's on that train and he's doing that, everyone's had those moments where he's texting and he's like, oh, there's no response, I'm really freaking out. And then it just sort of turned into like a bit of one of those musicals that they just start breaking out into some random thing where he's walking down the aisle and everyone's looking at him and we're getting the text messages on the screen, and that was just an overload for me of awkwardness.
I really liked that scene until he went all weird about it and started drawing in the entire train.
Yeah.
Like, how relatable is that scene when he's sitting there and just sweating on it? He's like, oh, why did I say that? What have I done? What have I done? Like, that was great.
Yeah, it was
almost. And then he just started like, oh, she replied. Like, what have I done? Like, I was all this sort of stuff. I was like, no, you ruined it.
I agree. The barbecue off, just the idea of it like a Western shootout, like this standoff, it was lame. And then to follow up with that after they finish the meal and he can't open the hand wipe wrapper, and she makes a comment about like, is this what you like with condom wrappers? I was just like, yeah, nah.
Two things with that. A, it certainly made me feel like American barbecue, but B, it's like the last time you want to hook up when you're completely full of meat. Like, all right, let's jump into it.
Exactly. There's Lila's mum, this little girl that Audrey's looking after. There's like a scene where she's like screams and gets her attention because she's got 16 candles on the screen, and she's like, oh, I was an extra in there, and I was like, damn, this doesn't make sense. I was like, was she like, this would be cool. This is a cool reference if she was in 16 Candles. But I looked her up. Like, I don't even think she was born when 16 Candles came out. Like, it was just a horrible reference.
Fair,
yeah, really bad. Last one too, that scene that you mentioned where it was like the 4th of July party and they're talking about I love you sort of thing. I think one of the lines after that happened was Griffin called her a sex goddess. And I just thought, oh god, cringeworthy. You don't say that like out loud. Whoever put that in the script? Come on, like that's not dialogue that people actually say.
Yeah, they used up all their dialogue prowess a minute beforehand.
Good. All right. Well, what are some themes or some ideas in this one?
Yes, so it's all about making those big adult decisions, and those decisions is about love and about work and about school, and why those decisions can matter, but why they also don't have to matter, and why it might be just as important for someone to figure out that they can drink in a bar without getting ID'd as it is to someone to realize that maybe we should break up this summer because it's going to be too hard to do it later on. They're the things that are going on in people's minds during this part of their life. And then that kind of ties nicely into the idea of, and this film does it a lot, the idea of right and wrong and that really murky grey area in between all of it. Griffin with his dad's secret, like, what do you do with that information? Did he make the wrong decision? I don't even know, because it's just so not clear cut what you should do. And life is basically like that. And that's the same again with Alec and Aaron breaking up. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but shit, you got to make a decision at some point, and that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, excellent points. Yeah, the same sort of things. That idea of growing up and moving on with life, enjoying those moments, not caring. That idea too of being successful a little bit in your own way, and we see that through Griffin. We see it through Audrey. You can be successful by doing it yourself, and I mean, it's a rom-com, so you got to have a little bit of that idea about love too, because a lot of this is about, is that love, can that love last? Can it continue on once you do become an adult, or once you do move on to your college? Yeah, nice. All right, well, what did you take away from this one?
Well, I reckon we're going to have similar ideas here, Jesse, but too often, as we sort of said, I felt like we just rushed through all these stories. And as I said, I really like the premise, and I love that we're meeting different characters with varying summer motivations. But most of the time, we rarely really get into that journey. Like, there's enough characters with semi-interesting stories to actually make this an actual 10-episode series type thing. And if that series, I think initially I would love to keep it as 10 and just leave it there. But if it's popular, then maybe there is an avenue to visit them later on and see how they're going, and whether their desires and their motivations and everything they learned in this summer is successful. But there was just too many characters, and we just kind of rushed through it all a little bit. But I think the characters that we rushed through, there's still merit in them, and it would have been so much nicer to spend more time with them, like Chad and Reese and like Foster, but even like figuring out Ricky and Erin and what they're going through before they break up and how that all plays out. I think if you give it the time, there was enough here to actually make it work.
Yeah, excellent. Very similar thoughts, just different sort of way, rather than extending it, sort of compacting it a little bit, I guess. Yeah. But the first thing is that the guy that plays Griffin, he's a good-looking dude. So I'm just want to put that out there. That was one takeaway I took. But the focus, like you mentioned. So if I was condensing this film, I'd be like, cool, let's make this film about Griffin and Phoebe. I put Audrey as Phoebe's best friend. So we still get her story, then we're done. We've got this film, and you get a nice, compact little story, and don't have to stress too much about everyone else. But I really like your idea of expanding it too. So, yeah, excellent. IMDb.
I understand what they're trying to say. I understand someone writing this film going, oh, we have to have this side, we have to have this side of it. So we're actually relating to everyone who's going through different things, because Phoebe and Griffin is a great story, and I enjoyed it. There's so many people that just won't even relate to that, because that's not part of what they're trying to do, or that's what they're not motivated by. So anyway, I like what they were doing. It just didn't quite work. Yeah. IMDb, I looked up Ricky, who's played by Tyler Posey. Like, it's so familiar that I was expected to jump on there and be like, that's what it was. The only thing I can think of is he's from Jane the Virgin, which I've never watched, but my wife's watched it, so I've probably seen a little bit of it. But he was just so familiar.
Is he in Teen Wolf as well? Is that the guy from Teen Wolf?
That rings a bell, but I've not seen that either.
Okay. Yeah.
But, he's very familiar.
I went on twice.
Nice.
Because the loser guy, Reese, I was like, that looks like that's the guy from Take the 10, the film that we did a long, long, long time ago. Right near the start, where you've got the guy from that TV show, Josh and Drake. Yeah. And I was like, that is so him. And I looked him up, and I bummed out because he was actually in Sierra Burgess as a loser. He was like the Rishi guy in that film. I was like, oh, okay. But I didn't feel, I was like, nah, this is not right. So I did a little bit more. It's his brother is the guy from Take the 10. So it's actually his brother. And I was like completely flabbergasted. I was like, okay, good. I was on the right track. So they're brothers. And I looked at two, they look so similar. So I'm going to pay myself that one. That was a good one.
That's a really good IMDb.
The other one was Audrey. I was like, as soon as she came on the screen, I was like, man, I know that face from somewhere. And I recently watched Mayor of Easttown, the HBO show with Kate Winslet, and that's where she's from. She's the mother of Kate Winslet's grandchild. Big part in that show. Well, yeah, a decent part in that show. I won't say too much about that in case people do want to watch Mayor of Easttown, but it plays a lot older character in Mayor of Easttown than she does in this.
She actually did look older. I mean, she did look familiar as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was something else she was in that I'd seen her in too. But that was the big one that I was like, recency. That's where we go with that. question time. Did you have any questions that you wanted to ask?
Obviously there was one there we already talked about, but
Yep.
yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like, how does this? Because I think this is the summer before college is a big thing in America, but how does this vary from Australia? Because I feel like the college experience is such a big move in the States, and they often uproot their lives. And for us, the summer after high school, before we started uni, it was basically just a summer with some part-time work that sort of paid for our next night out. Nothing significant was changing or happening. It's kind of like a whole few years of uni that you sort of go through this, part of your life where you're figuring out what to do. For America, it's very different. Do you think this is sort of strictly an American story and how it varies from Australia?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, like trying to think back, it's been a while now since that. That's what you pump up to kids, as you say. Once you finish your final school exams, you've got a 4-month, 5-month holiday where you can go away with your mates. You can, most people have started to turn 18, which is the drinking age in Australia. So you can go out, you can party, have big long nights. But like you mentioned too, it does involve an awful lot of work because you've got that freedom now to be able to work rather than have to study. And yeah, I think it probably is a little bit of a different sort of road because apart from Alec, we didn't really see many of these guys. We saw the losers working at that yogurt shop, but apart from that, I guess, yeah, and that might lead in a little bit to one of my questions too. I think that apart from Audrey, they were a very privileged bunch of kids. So maybe the situation can be similar, but it just depends on that class or that lifestyle that you come from too.
Yeah, but I guess also the idea of people moving away to go to college, whereas no one was going anywhere. We're all going to hang out for the next few years anyway.
But I'm sure you can think of kids like that age that you're at, that they went down the peninsula, down the beach, and they have these big mansions down Portsea Way and have these huge polo parties and all that sort of stuff too. So maybe we just weren't a part of that.
I was going to say, I don't know anyone. No. I wish I did.
I've never got invited anyway. So, but yeah, that can lead in because I thought Audrey, as much as I liked her, she felt very tokenistic, and I know that we've talked about the stereotypes in this as well because everyone else in this seemed really rich apart from Alec, who they had that scene where he was sort of looked down upon for being a tradie, I guess. And Griffin's got that some of that technical gear for his music he had in his room. I was like, wow. And then you've got that 4th of July party with the jet skis and the boats, and just is the class divide in this. Is this something that maybe there's a lot of people that won't connect with this?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, like Phoebe didn't have enough money to go to college, and that's why she was working on her film. And I don't know. I think there's maybe a little bit of that. I think it's very much a middle upper class suburban type setup, and probably not anyone really outside of that really fits in. There's certainly no real, even Audrey is lower class, doesn't even feel like the right fit. I think she's probably still got a little bit more going for her. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. Leading on for that too, did the excessive underage drinking concern you in this? Because there's quite a lot of it.
Well, the drinking age is 21 in America, which is weird enough as is. So I don't bat an eyelid when I see someone who's finished high school having a beer.
Yeah, true. Fair point. Anything else you wanted to ask?
No, that was it.
No. All right. Well, that gives us the chance to put this one all together, and we come up with a rating out of 5 to give us a Flix Forum average. What are your final thoughts, MJ?
Well, I liked the charm of this movie, and I like what it was trying to do, but it did fall flat in a lot of areas. With that said, I connected with some themes and some characters, and despite the whole narrative really failing to tie into itself, it still wasn't a terrible watch. So it's 2.5 stars for me.
Yeah, like I mentioned, really struggled at the start. About half hour to go, though, I was invested, and I think probably because these are probably some of the better performances in a young cast teen rom-com that maybe we've seen in some of these Netflix teen films that we've covered. Give me a sequel with Griffin and Phoebe trying to do the relationship long distance without any of the others in it, and I'll probably jump on board as soon as that comes out and be like, cool, I really want to see where these guys go. So I'm also giving it a 2.5.
I like that assessment, and you're right. The performances were really good.
Yeah, good. So we're on social media. We've got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Give us a follow. We're counting down to Christmas at the moment for 2021 to try and bring some positivity to the world. Question for this week. You don't have to answer this one. This one's a bit of a tough one, but I was like, would you be able to tell one of your parents that the other one's being unfaithful? I think that is such a tough conundrum. Like,
isn't it? Yeah.
And you wouldn't want to be put in that situation. So I think that the way they did in this film was really well done.
Yeah. I mean, you'd like to, your first step would be telling the parent who has been unfaithful that you have to tell. I kind of, Griffin didn't really do that, did he? He sort of implied it, but that would be the first way to go. And I know this sort of thing happens in movies and TV shows and whatnot. And it's like, no, I'm not going to. And it sort of, the decision comes to you. But it's certainly, when that happened in the film, I was like, God, give the guy a break. Like, how is he ever going to make this decision? Like, I know we've got a lot of other things to worry about here, and you're throwing this on him. Like, it was all well and good for him to be cheating on, not all well and good, but cheating on his wife, only to find out with his girlfriend's mum. I was like, come on.
Like, Chicago's a real small city, honestly. We will be back for another Netflix original next week. We've got another 2019 comedy. This one, I remember when it came out. It's called Wine Country. And this one is Amy Poehler's directing debut. And she also stars in it with Maya Rudolph, Rachel Dratch, Anna Gatzia, Paula Pell, Emily Spivey, Jason Schwartzman, and Tina Fey, her longtime collaborator. Which will be
right. Yeah, I remember when this came out as well. And this is again at the point where I'm like, we've got the podcast. We'll be doing this one soon anyway. And that was like 2 years ago.
From memory, I think that the target audience for this one might be not for us, but we'll give it a shot. No, exactly not what we are. We're not middle-aged.
It hasn't stopped us before, Jesse.
It hasn't. So we might come away enjoying it. Who knows?
Absolutely.
And thank you again. It's been it's always good to see you. So thank you.
Right back at you, mate. We'll chat next week.
Sounds good.